Welcome to ACD Combatives, your combatives and control tactics channel. Please like, subscribe, and share. Hey guys, Coach Kurt. So this one is kind of by request. I was talking with another instructor with my agency, and he wanted me to cover more on takedowns, but I think what he was getting at is more of your judo-like takedowns. So to talk about takedowns, we have to talk about Kazushi and the eight ways of redirecting, and why. I love judo. I think it's an amazing system, and I have no experience in judo. My background is in Hapkido. Now, there is some crossover. You'll see some gi-style throws that are probably more familiar or similar to like Japanese jiu-jitsu in Hapkido. It'd be like a combination of Japanese jiu-jitsu and Aikido and some wrestling, what you would find in Hapkido. But again, to talk about takedowns, we have to talk about the different ways of off-balancing and the 8 directions of off-balancing. And that's what you're seeing on the screen right now. And in this takedown, it's a foot stomp takedown where I use the backward direction to take somebody down. This is a good example of a quick takedown. It's something that I think he's talking about, and it requires using the gi. It's my favorite snap down. And that would be what I call ethical takedowns or soft takedowns for law enforcement. That snap down is great. And this is an example of Kazushi where I'm distracting with an off-balancing, and then that allows him or that makes him shift all his weight to the other foot, and then I'm able to do a leg sweep. That would be another, what I would call a soft takedown, but kind of an example of what he's talking about, almost like going directly into a takedown using the jacket or the coat, or not even necessarily the jacket or coat. You can do this no gi as well. Here's another example of just what I would call a shoulder throw. You might even call it a hip throw, but that's more of a shoulder throw, where I'm using the jacket to gather up the jacket. I'm stepping into the triangle that's between his legs and doing bringing him over my back. The mistake a lot of people make is they feel like you're lifting. There's the Kazushi, the off-balancing right there. I'm using another example of that, just using my wrist. That's something you wouldn't do in judo. That's more Hapkido. And you see how I'm using his arm to take him over my back. Now, I'm not lifting him. I'm creating the off-balance, filling the void, going below his waist, going below the balance point, below his center of balance, and hitting him at the thighs, and then just bending over. And I'm almost backing up into him to bring him over my back. If you were lifting, you're doing it wrong. Here it is from another angle, except instead of using the gi, I'm demonstrating like a shoulder throw using the arm instead, here from this angle. I'm stepping into that triangle I'm talking about, and I'm in my example, I'm doing a circle, and I'm almost backing up into him. I'm going below his center of balance, below his waist, and using my butt and hips to back up into him, taking him over your shoulder, over your back, over your hips, in that format. This is kind of what I think my friend was asking me to demonstrate. And again, there's the Kazushi where I'm off balancing. I'm filling that void. Here I am demonstrating, I'm filling that void with my elbow, and I'm stepping in, and again, I'm filling that void with my feet. I'm stepping in and back stepping in, stepping below his waist. See how my hips are below his waist? It's hard to see because both gis are blocking, and then I'm just loading him up onto my back. That is how you're immediately throwing somebody. And there I am just loading on my back, carrying him on my back, and demonstrating that. See how I'm just kind of backing up into him, and then at the last second just rotating the shoulder. Guys, again, I'm not a judo practitioner. I don't do it justice. A judo practitioner would look at this and scoff like, your technique is crap. But here Aiken is practicing it, and I'm saying, no, I think I'm telling him in this session that he's lifting too much, and there I am demonstrating by judo chopping my thigh, that you need to go below the hips into my thigh, and you're backing up into me. and then the person just literally floats over your back. As simple as that. Now, here's a great example of a shoulder throw where my old coach Colton uses it on me, and it was a perfect shoulder throw. That's why I'm showing it over and over and over from different angles, because it's just a tremendous throw. If you can pull this off, it's awesome. Now here is the hip throw again, but this is more of a body clinch variation and how to enter it from a body clinch. Instead of doing the traditional entry, I'm doing like a body lock, and the kazushi is with my head and my body and pushing them off weight balance and then entering into the throw. You see that more in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. What I'm advocating, best for police work because you're wearing a duty belt, is what I call body lock takedowns or clinch style takedowns, your double underhooks, your standing double legs. These are things that are great when you're wearing a duty belt. The problem with hip throws and even shoulder throws to a certain degree is when you have a duty belt on and you're wearing a vest, you have 30 pounds of gear. A lot of times it's easier to just do body lock takedowns, body fold style takedowns. And here I am just pummeling and practicing that style of takedown, what I call a body lock takedown or a hip bump takedown, with my partner Aiken here. He's my training partner. And just variations of how to do that. Again, imagine that I'm wearing a duty belt. And this is why I prefer what I call soft takedowns. They're more ethical for law enforcement. They're more controllable. It's not that you can't slam somebody really hard. Like here I am doing a hip bump takedown. See how ethical that is, how easy it is. And you're gaining control using kazushi, but you're going about it in a different manner. It's different than judo. It's more of wrestling. Here he's got me in a headlock, which is very common. I'm filling that hip up and I'm doing like a sacrifice takedown, just tripping him with my foot. Again, this style of takedowns that I've pretty much adapted for ACD combatives is softer, it's more ethical, and it's much more applicable if you are wearing a duty belt or lots of gear. And it's even super important if you are wearing, that's more of a hip throw. And again, imagine if I was wearing a duty belt, that might not be as easy. Your gear might get entangled up into the subject you're trying to throw. I'm not a big fan of that style takedown here. I'm demonstrating that versus the body clinch variation of a hip throw. So I've clinched with them maybe from a punch, or I've pummeled into it, I've pushed them, and then hip throw them. It's a little more controllable with gear. It's simpler and more ethical for law enforcement. And I think that's the biggest takeaway right there. Even if you're doing self-defense as a civilian, imagine the fact that yeah, you have to still be reasonable about your use of force. It doesn't matter if you're a cop or Joe citizen. In use of force, we would fall back on Graham v. Connor. Was it objectively reasonable level of force that you used? It doesn't have to be the least amount of force. It just needs to be reasonable. And so I tend to gravitate towards takedowns that seem more reasonable, that are based off of a strike or body lock clinch, because they're easier to do with gear. As much of a fan of I am of judo, and I think it's amazing. I couldn't even imagine to try to do it justice. If you do judo and you want to make comments on my channel about this, please do. I've always been fascinated with judo. There is some styles of judo. Here's like I just demonstrated on screen. I'm doing like an arm drag. These are the things that I think are much more applicable to law enforcement. Judo is amazing, and you totally can do judo in law enforcement. So please don't think that I'm saying that it's not as good for law enforcement. It's great, especially if you're really good at judo or that style of throwing. Greco-Roman, where it's basically judo without a gi, a lot of upper body throws and body locks, where in judo and Greco-Roman there's no leg grabbing or anything like that. And to me that's not, why would you avoid half of the body when you're trying to take people down? But that's neither here or there. But I'm just, because of the police work, the style of equipment that you're wearing, your hip gear, your gear around your hips, you've got a vest on, you're wearing 30 pounds of gear. I prefer your body lock or your clinch style takedowns for that reason. They're more ethical, they're safer, they're easier to teach, easier to train, because remember, in law enforcement control tactics, I'm trying to keep them from hurting themselves. They're not like professional martial arts students, or not even professional, but weekend warrior like me. But your average civilian is going to a class and learning from an instructor and learning how to do this stuff. It's safe. It's hard to do all that safely when you only have 8 hours a year to train it. So I hope I emphasize what I'm trying to get at as far as the types of takedowns, and for lack of a better term, your judo style takedowns versus your wrestling or combatives or control tactics, what I call ethical or soft takedowns, and why I teach it the way I do and why I emphasize it. Again, I'm not suggesting judo's not good. It is awesome. But I hope I made myself clear. If not, please comment like, dude, you didn't make yourself clear. Go back to the drawing board and try again. But again, I prefer body lock style takedowns off of a clinch or off of a strike, because they're more, in my opinion, self-defense oriented or law enforcement oriented versus like judo. And again, not saying judo isn't good for it. It's amazing. It's just, that's not my background. So you won't see me do a lot of judo style throws or takedowns. Anyway, let me know if you like this content. Like, subscribe, and share. Everybody take care. Everybody stay safe. And be careful out there.
Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out.